everyone. SAC has festivals, SAC has workshops, SAC has a great newsletter. Tina works on that. All kinds of performances in person and online. And so here we are tonight online. Now, this is the genre series. And with the genre series, every month we highlight in a virtual presentation, a virtual show, a different genre. So it could be personal stories, there could be tall tales, it could be myths, folk tales, legends, historical stories. But of course, it's December, so what better time for sacred and inspirational stories? I think at the end of the year is when you flip that calendar sheet and it says December, it immediately sends you into some reflection about what has happened during the year, the highs and the lows, and what your expectations are going forward, and the things that have brought you joy, and the things that are inspiring to you, things that you want to share. So that's what this genre show is all about. They're held once each month, always on the third Wednesday. And tonight, I'm Marilyn McPhee, and Tina Tomiyama and I are co emceeing this show. And we also have to acknowledge Ed Lewis, who's here. And the genre series was his brainchild. And he and Tina are taking that into the future with some really wonderful things. So we're going to jump right in because we've got some stories and we want to hear the stories. First up is Bowen Lee. Bowen Lee is coming to us as a member of the Asian American Storytellers in Action. And perhaps you might guess from her background that she is coming to us from Olympia, Washington. And Bowen is going to share with us an ancient Chinese folk tale. So the floor is yours, Bowen.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. This tale is from China. How many people actually get what they wish for? Well, it happened to somebody, and what he wished for was this. Before he died, he wanted to know the difference between heaven and hell. Well, he had always heard that you have to be good to go to heaven, and if you're bad, you go to hell. But it's so much harder to be good than it is to be bad. He wanted to know whether it was worth all the trouble. And besides, he wanted to know before he died what he was getting into. So he wanted to visit heaven and hell. So he got his wish, and the first place he went to was hell. And hell was a vast, spacious room, huge. And hell was filled with round tables, tables that were laden with the most delicious food. Oh, the smells that were coming. Just imagine the most favorite foods that you have laid out before you. Oh, and the aromas, hot and cold, sweet and sour, savory and sweet, all of the spices and flavors filling the air. But in hell, what also filled the air were cries and moans and groans and shouts and screams. Because there is only one rule in hell. Each person got a pair of chopsticks that were 1 meter long, 3 feet long. And the rule in hell was that in order to eat the food in hell, you had to use the chopsticks. So people were trying their very best But no matter what they could do, they could not get the food. They could not eat. And all people in hell were starving. And they were already dead. So that meant they were going to suffer for all eternity. Oh, people went insane. They became violent and they became so depressed. There was no hope in hell. It was just constant, eternal suffering and misery. Well, the man had seen enough of hell. So now he wanted to go visit heaven. Oh, this must be the place. And heaven was a huge, vast room. And the room was filled with round tables. And on the tables were the most delicious foods imaginable. Oh, wonderful smells filled the air in heaven. But the air in heaven was also filled with the sound of conversation and laughter and stories. People in heaven also got chopsticks that were 1 meter long. And there was also a rule in heaven. You had to eat the food in heaven with these chopsticks. But here is what people in heaven were doing. They were feeding each other. So everybody in heaven was content. Oh, well, the man had seen what he had come to see. So he went back to Earth. And when he got home, he decided he was going to spend the rest of his life practicing what he saw in heaven and not what he saw in hell. In heaven, they were all full of kindness and compassion and care for each other. They trusted each other. They shared, they enjoyed. Oh, if we all did that and practiced what was in heaven and made heaven here on earth, don't you think that would make the difference here between heaven and hell? Thank you.
Thank you, Bowen, for that very, very vivid story. Bowen, as I told you, came to us from the group of Asian American Storytellers in Action. And each of our storytellers tonight is here on this show because they were nominated by a storytelling group in California who that they're a part of. And so every month with the genre series, all of the storytelling groups are invited to nominate a storyteller. If you're a member of a storytelling group and you would like to be nominated, contact the person in charge in your group and see if they can nominate you for one of our future shows. So, moving right along, our next storyteller is Lorraine Gonzalez. Lorraine is coming to us from Sacramento, California, and she is coming to us from the In a Nutshell group. She is bringing us a personal story, and she told me to tell you, she'll tell you at the end the name of that story. Take it away, Lorraine.
Thank you. In 2018, the beginning of 2018, my family and I decided to take a magical trip to Greece. We had never been to Europe before, but we had been watching a lot of Mamma Mia, and we would sing and dance along with the movie and think about swimming in the blue water and visiting the blue and white buildings and eating all of the feta cheese. We were really excited about going. We were going to celebrate my 40th birthday and my daughter's 16th birthday. But about a week after we booked the trip, I was on a work trip with some coworkers and we decided to stop at downtown Disney before we headed back home. And while we were there waiting in line to get on a virtual reality ride, my phone rang and it was my stepsister. And she told me that my dad had been found on the floor and he couldn't move, he couldn't speak, couldn't remember where he was or who he was or what day it was. And he was on his way to the hospital. So I was in Anaheim and my flight didn't leave for about another 3 hours. And I was sick with worry and wondering if I was going to make it back in time, if he was going to still be there by the time I made it back. He had had a stroke or, what was going on. And so I finally made it back. I rushed to the hospital and they told me that he had had a catastrophic bleed in his brain. He had a genetic condition and it caused lesions and all over his brain. And sometimes the lesions would bleed very slowly and sometimes it was catastrophic. And this time it was a really large bleed. It affected so much of who he was. And for months and months after that, it was um, just rehabs and emergency rooms, physical therapy, occupational therapy, back to the hospital, back to assisted living, back to physical therapy, over and over. And during that time, the relationships with my step family just kind of got broken beyond repair. And I was an only child, and I ended up basically being told that I was going to be the sole caretaker for my dad, and I had to figure out where he was going to live, how we were going to take care of him. And I was a mother of two children. I was working full time. I was his only daughter. I was struggling with anxiety and depression, worry and fear, and kind of going out of my mind. And all that time, a trip to Greece was looming on the horizon. It was non-refundable. It was fully paid. And I told my family, I'm not going. I can't leave my dad. They understood. But I went and told my dad, and he laughed and he took my hand and he said, "Are you crazy? You're going to give me a hug and you're going to say your goodbyes and walk out the door and not look back. And you're going to go out and live your life." That was my dad. He was so practical, so logical, so direct, but he had lived such a full life and he wanted the same for me. So I found someone to take care of my dad while I was gone, and I went on this trip to Greece, sick with worry, crying, not being able to sleep. I wanted to show my daughter and my family that life was for living and for celebrating. And so we went. We had a magnificent time. We spent a little over a week there and we went to the ocean and ate all the Greek food and visited all of the ruins. It was beautiful and magical. And on the last day, we were supposed to go to the mountains to Delphi, where the temple of Apollo resides. In Delphi, it said that Zeus threw a rock down from the heavens onto Earth, and it landed squarely in the middle of the earth, right in Delphi. When you get up to the mountains, it's absolutely magnificent. It just looks ancient and magic. You're above the clouds, and it's so peaceful. The oracle was supposed to be there along with Apollo, giving wisdom and advice and healing to all of the ancient peoples, and I sure did feel that while I was up there. Um, so by some miracle, I found myself at the top of the mountain overlooking the Temple of Apollo, and I had that mountain all to myself. I sat there, I meditated, and I prayed, and I asked the universe for guidance, for help to be able to take care of my dad, take care of my family, and take care of myself. And as we were descending the mountain, driving down the curvy roads, we turned a corner, and there, chewing on some grass, was a solitary white mountain goat. And my spirit instantly said, "Spirit guide." And I thought, are you serious? I'm getting a goat. Um, Many years before that, my mom had died, and I took kind of a spiritual journey across Montana to visit some Native American events and celebrations. And as I was there, I also kind of put forth to the universe that I needed help and guidance. And on that trip, the most beautiful white horse came running down the road as we were driving by. It was wild and free and magic, and it represented to me all of the freedom and adventure that I needed at that moment to go forth and live life and celebrate and do all of the wonderful things. And it was beautiful. So imagine my surprise when I ask for another guide and I get a goat. But as I reflected on it and I looked back, the goat represented stamina, stability, sturdiness, practicality. It was all of the things that my dad was, and all of the lessons that he tried to instill in me. And I knew it was exactly what I needed to be more like that goat, to keep going one step at a time, one foot after another in the face of hardness. So I went back to see my dad after the trip, and he was still there. He was holding out for me. He died about 3 weeks after I returned. And a couple of nights before he died, he held my hand, and he couldn't talk anymore at this point, but he held me and he looked into my eyes, and I knew in that look that all of the I love yous that were ever said or unsaid were being given that day. It was the most beautiful moment. And then he passed away. And after he died, I commissioned a painting um, of me on top of that mountain, the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. And in it, my mom is standing there on her white horse, and my dad is standing there on his goat. And I hang it in my bedroom, and it's a place where they can look after me and look upon me for the rest of time. And in times of need, I remember that if you're ever in need of guidance, all you have to do is ask, and the universe will provide, even if it's a goat. Thank you. They have a picture. Thank you. I love that. I have a picture to share with you all of the painting that was made.
Yes.
There it is. There's my dad with his goat. And the funny story is, as that artist was painting it, she said, I can find so many reference pictures of people riding on horses, but I can't find any reference of anyone riding on a goat. So do you want an extra large goat or an extra short dad? And he said, neither. I want normal size and I just want him to be straddling because that's what he would be doing. There we have it. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. That was a very, very moving story.
Thank you.
Something we'll remember. So, our next storyteller is Rose Owens, and Rose is coming to us from Northern California from the Do Tell Story Swap group. And she is offering a classic story, her version of a story that was written, at least in another version, by Tolstoy. But this is Rose's version of A Christmas Guest. Let's listen to Rose.
Christmas Guest has an interesting history. It was first written in 1883 by Reuben Salins, and it was translated, and Tolstoy found it and thought it was in the public domain, and he wrote his version. And then it was translated into English, and then it was translated back to France, where Salins lived, and he realized his copyright had been violated. So he contacted Tolstoy, who apologized profusely. But it was translated into English again, and it came to the United States, and it was printed in a Hallmark greeting card. And then Helen Steiner Rice turned it into a poem. Then Grandpa Jones, who was a banjo-playing American entertainer, performed the piece. And it was also performed at later time by Johnny Cash, Reba McEntire, and Andy Griffith. And I based my version on the Tolstoy version. Martin Avidich stood at the window looking out. He watched the snow softly drift down to the street. He listened to the children shouting and crying for joy. He could smell the turkey baking in various homes. It was Christmas, and he was alone. But after all, it was Christmas, and he watched as the shadows darkened and the street became bare, and he closed his shutters and he sat down. Now, he did not often read in the Bible, but tonight he did, and he lifted up the book and he read with his fingers tracing the lines. He read of Mary and Joseph coming to Bethlehem, and there was no room at the inn, and the baby was born in a stable. That's not right, he thought. That's not right. He should not have been born in a stable. If they had come to my village, I would have invited them in. I would have given Mary my bed. I would have wrapped the baby Jesus in my warm quilt. He sat down and continued reading. He read of the wise men who saw the star, and they followed the star, and they brought gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh, and laid them before the Christ child. I don't have a gift for baby Jesus. He reached up onto the shelf, and he took down a box, and he dusted off the lid, and he opened it up, and inside was a beautiful pair of tiny baby shoes, the finest leather shoes he had ever made. I could give this to baby Jesus, he said. And then he sat down in his chair, and his eyes were tired, and he closed his eyes and fell asleep. And in his dream, he heard a voice, and as it is when you dream, you instantly know who it is. And it was the voice of Jesus. And Jesus said, Martin, tomorrow I will come to visit you. Tomorrow is Christmas Day, and I will come to your house. And then the next thing, but the voice said, you will not know who I am. And the next thing Martin knew, the church bells were ringing, and it was Christmas morning. And he got out, oh, today he comes. And Martin went to the window, and he opened his shutters, and he looked out. The street was empty, except for a street sweeper. He was out there in the cold, and His hands were red. And Martin went to the door and he said, "Come in, come in. I have some hot chocolate. Come sit by my fire." And the street sweeper came in and he sat by the fire and he cradled a mug of hot chocolate in his hands and savored the warmth. And he noticed that Martin kept looking at the window. And he said, "Are you expecting someone?" And so Martin told him of the story and how Jesus was coming. And as the street sweeper got up to leave, he said, "I hope you get your dreams come true. I hope." And when the door opened, the burst of cold air rushed into the room, and Martin looked at the cold sweeper, and he stood up and he picked up his coat from off the wall, and he said, "Here, take this. It will keep you warm. And there are gloves in the pocket." And as he shut the door, he said, "My old coat will do me for one more year." And then he thought about Jesus. Would he be a baby? Would he be a grown man, a carpenter? Or would he come as the King of glory that he was? And he tidied his room and he made his bed and he went to the window and looked out and he made some soup for his dinner and he went to the window and looked out and he saw an old woman with a ragged black shawl. And she was carrying a bundle of sticks, and every so often one of them would fall, and she would hunch over and pick it up. And Martin went to the door and said, "Let me help you." And he took a rope and he tied that bundle of sticks up tight. He said, "Come in and get warm." And he sat her down by his fire and gave her of his soup. And they visited. And as she got up to leave, she said, "Martin, God bless you, Martin Avidovich." And then she was gone. And Martin stood at the window and watched. And the shadows grew deeper and longer. And he still had not come. And then Martin saw, huddled close to the side of a building, a young woman, and she was carrying something in her arms. And when they got closer, he could see that she carried a baby, and his face was as sad and pinched as the mother's. He came to the door and he said, "Come in, come in." And he sat her down by the fire and he gave her soup, and he warmed milk, and he sat the baby on his lap and spooned milk into the baby's mouth. "I know how," he said. "I've had children of my own." Then he looked down. "She has no shoes." "I know. My husband has died, and I am going to the next village to see if I can find work, and then perhaps I can buy her some shoes." Martin reached up, gave the baby back to his mother, reached up, brought down the box, and said, "Here, try these on." And they fit perfectly. And the mother and the baby went out the door. The mother was smiling, and the baby was gurgling happily. And Martin stood at the window, and the streets were empty. The street was dark. He shut the shutters and sat down. He didn't come. He didn't come. It was only a dream. And then he heard a voice. Who is that?" And he recognized it. It was the voice of Jesus. And Jesus said, "Martin, 3 times my shadow crossed your door. I was the street sweeper that wears your coat. I was the old woman with the bundle of sticks. I was the mother with the baby in her arms. 3 times you gave me a gift. And of all the gifts, love is the best. Verily I say to you that if ye have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me." And the room was silent and hushed, and Martin could hear the clock ticking, and he felt like running and shouting and dancing for joy. He came. He really did. He came.
Rose, thank you so much for that very joyful story. Beautifully told. So, our next storyteller is coming to us from Malibu and from the Yours Truly group of storytellers. And she has a personal story for us about dancing. So, Debbie Palmer Siegel, let's hear your story.
Hi, it's called She Just Wants to Dance. The first blues song I ever fell in love with was Billie Holiday's My Man. For whatever my man is, I am his forevermore. Her voice was the smoothest sound I'd ever heard, and I loved her dedication to her man. My nana knew Billie Holiday, and she told me that Billie sure did love the piano man, almost as much as she loved her reefer. It was Diana Ross who played Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues, and she was awesome in that show. I saw her many times in concert after that movie, and every time she sang Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand, Make This World a Better Place, if you can, I cried like a baby. At 12 years old, I bought my first 45 record. It was B.B. King singing The Thrill Is Gone. B.B. named his guitar Lucille, and he knew how to make that guitar talk. The next two albums I bought, the first one was Elvis Presley's Polk Salad Annie. Now that's polk salad. A mean and vicious woman who made the alligators look scared. Lord have mercy. And the second album I bought was Superstition by Stevie Wonder. His sister's black, but she is sure enough pretty. Her clothes are old, but Lord, her skirt is short, but Lord, her legs are sturdy. Her clothes are old, but never are they dirty. Living just enough in the city. I remember hearing the police sirens in the background of that song and being in awe of Stevie's brilliance. These songs influenced my youth far more deeply than any time I spent in school. A decade later, I heard Kevmo sing. When the music starts to playing, she slides out on the floor, dancing without a partner, swaying on the 2 and 4. Well, she's moving kind of lazy, and it's obvious to me this little girl ain't crazy. She's as wild as she is free. She can feel it in her fingers, and it moves on down her spine. She just wants to dance. The first time I heard that song, I thought, oh my God, he's singing about me. In 1977, when I was a teenager, my boyfriend Mark was the leader of a rock and roll band. Mark was the piano man and sometimes singer. He was a cross between Mick Jagger, Jackson Browne, and a devout Buddhist. We were all devout Buddhists back then. They played at a local dive called the Broken Mirror. It was located in Granada Hills, a couple of blocks from my home, and I loved going there. With my phony ID at hand, I'd show up to dance and support the band. When the music's when she moves her hips and parts her lips, you know she's feeling fine. She ain't looking for no lover. She ain't looking for romance. She just wants to dance. Kev Moe was a shy, quiet guitar player in the band. He was known as Kevin Moore back then. His words opened my heart with that song. That man knows me from the inside out. I know I'm not the only woman that feels like that, but I am the one who danced on that floor night after night and still dance blissfully to this day. It is a joy that has never left me. 9 years later, in 1986, I married Herbie at the Bel Air Hotel. My ex-boyfriend Mark was an invited guest, and Kev Moe, played in the band that evening. The music was so good that Herbie paid the band overtime to play late into the night. Nobody wanted to stop dancing. It was truly one of the happiest days of my life. A decade later, After getting my second BA degree at CSUN, 2 brain surgeries, and a baby, Herbie and I saw Kebmo perform at the Malibu Inn. After the show, we went backstage to see him. I was nervous, wondering if he would remember me. From across the room, he raised his arms in the air with that big, wide grin and called out, "Debbie Palmer!" He embraced us both with warm hugs. Later that evening, Kevin asked me, "What's your secret to that enduring, happy relationship?" I told him. Herbie loved to please me, and that made us both happy, brought us both great joy. Kebmo's album was out, and She Just Wants to Dance was a hit. That wasn't the only song that made me love that man. It took me years, but I finally asked Kebmo, "Did you have me in mind when you wrote that song?" He smiled, tilted his head down, and said, "Yep." But even if he didn't, would he have told me? My mom and 3 sisters all have really beautiful legs. I grew up hating my big fat thighs. I would even skip PE in school because I didn't want anyone to see my big fat thighs, even though PE is my favorite class. I love exercise. I consider health as wealth and movement as medicine. But because of my shameful big fat thighs, it was out of the question. I would never wear shorts in public. My youngest sister, Susie, even modeled her legs. I remember looking at a legs pantyhose advertisement and thinking, "Those legs look just like Susie's." Later to find out they were my sister's legs. So I just hid mine. Then Kevmo wrote, "I love big booty and big fat thighs." Yeah, big fat thighs. Those words brought so much warmth and joy that it's difficult for me to think about without smiling really big. Years of shame instantly melted away when I heard those words. Other great songs like Grandma's Hands, which he sang and Bill Withers wrote, and You Don't Have to Shave Your Legs, which Kebmo did write, hit home too. In so many ways, music not only improved my life, but saved it. I feel I am more accepting of myself because of the words of a song, words so comforting that instead of feeling shame for who I am, I feel joy. Words not only loving and true, but sung in that bluesy way that makes me just want to dance. As Bruce Springsteen wrote in My City in Ruins, "I pray for the strength, Lord, with these hands. I pray for the love, Lord, with these hands. I pray for the faith, Lord, with these hands." All right, come on, rise up. After all, it was Woody Guthrie who said, "A good song can only do good." He also wrote, "This land is your land. This land is my land." From California to the New York Island. Being born in New York and now living in California, these words hit home. Words that bring pride, joy, and tears to my eyes. This song was originally written as a protest song and reminds me it is time to rise up. And words that inspire never die. Written by Bob Dylan. Yes, and how many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? How many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? And how many deaths will it take before he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Now, more than ever, I am called to rise up. Now, more than ever, I am grateful for the words and music that inspire me to stand up for our rights and our freedoms. Those songs are still blowing, and I am still dancing.
Debbie, thank you so much for that memory-filled story. So much to think about. Next, coming to our virtual stage, who a person living in Santa Barbara, but part of the Story Masters group, and that's Heba Hamden, who is coming to us with a personal story. We're excited to hear your story, Heba. Take it away.
Want to record Prakriti?
Yes, you can send me a request to record. I haven't received it, Hiba. Yeah, you need to click on request to record to my computer.
Have you ever had a dream that you tried and tried and tried to achieve, but every time you failed to reach it? This was exactly the case with my dream of becoming a doctor. Maybe it was too big of a dream at the time. I was a kid growing up in the civil war of Lebanon. 15 long years of fighting and bombing from 1975 till 1990. Dad had stopped working after an accident that left him with a broken hip that didn't heal well. My siblings, all much older than me, either married or living away, and they weren't able to help much. So my mom started to do babysitting at home, and I started to give tutoring lessons to our neighbors' children. Still, it wasn't much, and medical schools were too expensive in Lebanon. Then a member of my family in Europe said to me, Hiba, I'm so proud of you. With your high grades, you can get into any medical school. I'm gonna get you a scholarship to Europe. I was excited. I was so happy and full of hope. Unfortunately, he failed to follow it through. I lost that scholarship and a whole year waiting for it. I got so furious. Mom tried to comfort me. She said, honey, you need to be realistic. We can't afford the Jesuit or the American University of Beirut. Better for you to be a teacher. I said, no, I don't want to be a teacher. Later, I figured, okay, I'll teach, but at the same time, I will start at the Faculty of Science at the Lebanese University. It's free, they have late afternoon classes. 1 month after I started, the Faculty of Science building was bombarded to the ground, and the whole campus became a line of demarcation between the two fighting militias. My luck, yeah. My brother Fadil said to me one day, Hiba, why don't you try to find a job at the hospital? It's the only business that doesn't close during war. And you've been volunteering at our town's clinic, so you've got some experience in urgent care. Well, that idea kind of reignited the fire in me. If I'm in a medical field, who knows, it could prepare me for a medical school. And so it was. I started at a small hospital in our area, first at their emergency room for a couple of months. Then I managed to transfer to the operating room. There, I had a happy surprise. One of the two supervisors there was a dear friend of our family, Ramzi. I hadn't seen her for many years. I didn't know she was working there. I was happy to see her, see that she hasn't changed much. Still the loving lady and with a beautiful smile, short brown reddish hair. But by then, at that time, she was 8 months pregnant. Ramzi was a scrub nurse. So she used to help the surgeon in the surgery, at the surgery table in the sterile area. I was a circulating nurse, so I would help prepare the OR, help hand some equipment and tools, but from outside the sterile area. Ramzi became a great mentor to me. She taught me how to use the autoclave to do sterilization, what's the name of all the instruments we use, how to assemble trays for each surgery. And I was fascinated by these trays, especially the orthopedic one used for bone surgery. It has drills and hammers and wrenches. I said, Ramzi, we can use this tray to fix humans and cars. I was also fascinated by the anesthesia machine, and I learned about it from our anesthesiologist. Dr. Walid looked like a young Clint Eastwood. Very serious, never smiled. He had great manners, but somehow he used to scare me. He was a perfectionist. I was afraid to make mistakes, but that pushed me to learn more and do better. So he became another mentor to me. On one of these days in the early morning, Ramzi and I were running like crazy to prepare the OR for an eye surgery. The ophthalmologist and Dr. Walid, they were already there, but the scrub nurse assigned for that surgery hadn't reached the hospital. There was a bombing somewhere nearby. In that case, usually it's Ramzi who would be our backup. But that morning, she looked very, very tired. She was very pregnant. Without thinking, I said, Ramzi, let me help with this surgery. She turned and said, no, Hiba, you're not ready. I said, you're here. This is a cataract surgery, very easy. If we have to, you jump in, right? She didn't answer and kept going back and forth, just arranging the tools and equipment. Then she said, okay, let's do it. Okay. And then I started to realize the big risk I put myself into. What if I made a mistake? What if the surgeon asked me for a specific clamp and I didn't know which one to give him? And this was an eye surgery. Can you imagine poking someone in the eye with a knife? Tiny scalpel, fancy name. It's still a knife. I was horrified. When Ramzi put the scrubbing gown on me, I was shaking, but I tried to hide it. Everything was surreal. I didn't know how we finished. Then I asked Ramzi, how did I do? She smiled and said, "You did great." And Dr. Walid thought so. Wow. A compliment from my two amazing mentors that meant the world to me. After that first surgery, they allowed me to do more and more. I didn't become a doctor. After all, I became an electrical engineer. So, was my work as a scrub nurse a waste of time? Absolutely not. That scrubbing experience taught me how to control my fear and move forward. And this helped me so much in so many ways later in my life. When I was driving my motorcycle in Beirut to go to give tutoring lessons, sometimes during the bombing, sometimes when snipers were shooting at me, I sure had to scrub away my fears so that I could finish my engineering degree. That degree helped me discover a new dream path, a career in the airlines business, a field of travel and discovery I'm passionate about, way more than becoming a doctor. You too. If fear is holding you back, find a mentor who can teach you, push you, and cheer for you. And just scrub away your fears. You'll reach way beyond your dreams.
Thank you, Hiva, for that story of triumph and learning. Appreciate that. So, coming up next is a storyteller from the Storytellers of San Diego, from Northern San Diego in Carlsbad, Catherine Bonin, who is bringing us a story of warmth. Catherine, looking forward to your story.
Thank you, Marilyn. Well, it was 1959, Christmas Eve. Jack and Marta had been married for 10 months. Jack had gotten a job as an assistant in the accounting department at a shoe manufacturing plant, and he wasn't making much money. But he wanted to make sure that he had some money to buy something for Marta for Christmas. So for many months before Christmas, he saved $1 from every paycheck. And he listened very carefully to her. One day she came to dinner and she told him that she had seen a red coat at the corner boutique and it was so beautiful. And he knew right then and there that that was going to be the Christmas gift he would give her. So on Christmas Eve, he took all those dollar bills and he went into the store to buy that red coat. He found it, of course, right away, picked it up and placed it over his arm, walked over to the cashier and laid down his dollar bills, counting them. The coat was 16 and he had $19 on him. He was still holding the coat when the doorbell rang. The door opened and the bell above the door chimed, and in walked a little boy about 8 years old. He looked around a little confused and he looked at Jack and said, "Mister, can you help me?" Jack squatted down and looked at the little boy at eye level. He said, "Certainly, I'll help you. What's your name?" The little boy said, "Johnny." And Jack said, "Johnny, what can I help you with?" And Johnny said, "I need to buy a coat for my mom for Christmas. She's sick and she's cold. She doesn't have a coat and she hasn't been feeling well and she won't come outside with me because she doesn't have a coat." And Jack said, "Well, let's go find her one. How much money do you have?" The little boy reached in his pocket and he pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. And then he reached in his pocket again and he pulled out a dime. And he said, "I've been doing odd jobs and chores and walking dogs for all of my neighbors so I could get this money so that I could buy my mom a winter coat." And Jack said, "Let's go look and see what they've got." And they looked at the coats on the rack, every single one, but Johnny didn't like any of them. Jack was still holding that red coat, though. And Johnny said, "I like that red coat that you're holding." Jack looked at it And he looked at Johnny, and then he looked at the clerk and he said, "How big is your mom? Do you know what size she is?" And Johnny said, "No, but she's like her." And he pointed to the clerk. And so Jack took the coat over to the clerk and asked the clerk to put it on. And Johnny said, "Oh, it's so beautiful. My mother will love it. And red is her favorite color." And Jack said, "Well, you're in luck, Johnny, because this coat is exactly $1 and 1 dime." And he gave the coat to the clerk, and the clerk went into the back, put it in a box, put a big bow on the box, and brought it back and gave it to Johnny. Johnny walked out of the shop with a big smile on his face. Well, the clerk and Jack talked for a few minutes and about how kind Jack had been. And the clerk put the dollar and the dime in an envelope and gave it to Jack. Well, on the way home, there weren't any more stores open, but there was a corner flower shop open, and it was Christmas Eve. So Jack decided to spend those $3 that he had left to buy some flowers for Marta. When he walked in the house, he gave her the bouquet of flowers, and she looked at him and she said, "Something's wrong. I know you too well. You can't keep any secrets from me. What is going on, Jack?" And Jack sat down and told her the story of little Johnny and the red coat. Marta threw her arms around Jack and said, "That's the best Christmas gift you can give me. You gave away love today. That's the most important thing any of us can give anyone." And she took that dollar and dime out of the little bag that the clerk had given to Jack, and she put it in a box, a Christmas box, and she tied it with a bow, and she put that box underneath their Christmas tree. And every single winter, every single Christmas, that box was underneath the Christmas tree so they could remember that first Christmas that they shared together and the love that Jack gave away. And of course, that red coat that Marta never got. Well, many years went by. Jack retired from the shoe factory, and he had been saving money so that he and Marta could do a big retirement trip, which they did. And they had a wonderful time. When they came back, it was only a few weeks later when Marta started having some problems with her vision. And so they went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to tell you that you're losing your vision. Your right eye is pretty bad, and your left eye, well, that's going to catch up pretty soon. And in the next couple of months, you won't have any sight at all." And he said, "There is an operation that can be done, but it's very expensive. It's a little risky, and it's still somewhat experimental, so your insurance is not going to pay for it. Do you have the financial wherewithal to do this?" And Jack shook his head sadly. Marta started to cry. And he told the doctor, "I've never had a lot of money. We've never been wealthy. We've lived pretty much paycheck to paycheck, and we just came back from a vacation that I'd saved so long for. We just don't have the money. So we'll go home and we'll pray about it, and we'll have to see what happens. Maybe we'll talk about selling the house or see if we can come up with some other ideas." Well, the young doctor sat back and looked at Jack and looked at Marta, and he said, "You're wrong. You are a very wealthy man." Jack sat back and, "What are you talking about? I'm not wealthy. I just told you about our financial situation." And the doctor said, "Well, many, many years ago, you made a very smart investment." He said, "My name is Johnny." And Jack, in that moment, recognized the smile from that doctor. He said, "You helped me buy a red coat for my mother. My mother changed that Christmas. She got out of bed. She started going outside with me. From that day to this, my mother wears that red coat every winter, and she puts it underneath the Christmas tree to remind both of us that the best thing anyone can ever give away is love." Jack said, "Wow, that's so wonderful, so wonderful." And he said, "I'm so happy to have met you again." And the doctor said, "That investment that you made is going to pay off, because this surgery, Marta's going to get this surgery, and all it's going to cost you, $1 and a dime." My mother always told me that we can't take anything with us when we leave this world except for the love that we give away.
Oh, Catherine, thank you so much for that story about the price of the best gifts. Well, wrapping up our evening is going to be a storyteller from Los Angeles, from the Community Storytellers, and that's Karen Golden, who's coming to us with a personal story. Karen, looking forward to your story.
Thank you, Marilyn. I said yes. I would love to be the penguin mascot in the ice show. Nancy, the organizer of the ice show, who was also the chief decorator of the Water Street Pavilion downtown shopping center in my hometown of Flint, Michigan, looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No, I would love to skate as the penguin in the ice show." She said, I didn't even know you skated. I was kind of kidding you when I asked you, but maybe I thought maybe you knew somebody that would skate the penguin part." And I replied that I had always wanted to be a penguin in an ice show. You see, I grew up skating. My mother taught me to skate when I was 3 years old, and I had been in many ice shows as a child, but I never skated a solo. I was always in a group number with lots of other skaters, doing a chorus line. But now was my opportunity to shine as a solo skater. And at age 28, I felt like I had reached my Olympics. And then Nancy told me the really great news that I would be skating in a penguin costume like they wear at Disneyland, you know, the kind with the great big head. And I thought to myself, even better, because nobody will know that it's me inside. I will get to be someone else, a penguin, for a while. And that sounded great. And then she also informed me that this costume may not arrive until just a day or so before the ice show. And I said, I've skated in plenty of costumes. And then I started thinking to myself, and if I happen to fall, which I know I won't, no one will know it's me inside. So I got to work choreographing my solo in the ice show. I decided, because it was a holiday show, that I would pick the most iconic Christmas song. You know, the one that goes bum 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 ba da 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 dun dun glide glide bum ba da 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 dun dun jump 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 da 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 spin jazz hands dun da 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 glide glide da da dun da 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 dun dun. Oh, I was so excited for the day of the ice show to arrive. And then it did, the same day that the costume arrived. I came to the rink a couple of hours before the show to try on the costume. It was really big. I think they expected the mascot to be a real tall person, and I'm not very tall. The arms were much too long for me, and the legs were enormous, but that's okay. I rolled up the arms and I rolled up the feet. The mittens were huge and they were really fuzzy. Matter of fact, the whole costume was really fuzzy. And then they put the head on top of my head. Well, the eyes were up here. They were these great big white eyes, and the place that I had to look out was at the neck, a very small hole. The head was enormous and it wobbled back and forth, and they had to rig something up so the head wouldn't fall off. So they put a lot of stuffing inside and some plastic, and because the head was going on and off and on and off, I took off my glasses. I'm extremely nearsighted without my glasses on, and I forgot to put them back on the final time when they put the head on. I looked out the little hole, and everything was a blur. They led me out to the ice rink, and then they gave me this enormous bouquet of helium balloons, and they asked if I could give a balloon to each child. I looked out the little hole and I couldn't see the strings, and the balloons were way up there, so I couldn't see the balloons either. And then the music started. Bum 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 ba da 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 glide glide. I just wanted to stay upright on my skates. I forgot all my choreography. And then I started hearing the voices of the children. I want a red balloon. I want a green one, not the red one, not the green. I want a blue one. I couldn't feel the strings with my mittens because they were so thick and I couldn't see the colors of the balloons. And I was trying my hardest to get the right colors and even just feel the strings. And then I heard some children say, my balloon went all the way up into the sky. And then I heard a very small voice say, I want a red balloon. I don't want a green balloon. I want a red one. And then I heard the distinctive voice of a mother say, James, don't climb over the guardrail. James, what are you doing? And then I felt my skate butt up against something. It was James. I fell over James flat onto the ice. And then I heard his mother say, James, are you okay? Yes, Mommy, I'm okay. I just wanted the red balloon. And then I heard the voices of the crowd saying, but what about the penguin? Is he okay? I'm a she inside of here. I'm murdered. My voice couldn't be heard because when I fell, the head turned to the side and I was still looking out, but there was no hole. As I lay flat on the ice, with one sense down, meaning no sense of sight, my sense of smell grew very keen. And I began to smell the inside of that giant head. It smelled like sweat. It wasn't my sweat because it was so cold I was not sweating. And then I started imagining that there had been others that had rented this costume and worn that head, like a man at an amusement park, and maybe a boy who wore that head at homecoming for the football game, and maybe a lady had worn it for library day in the summer and it was 95 degrees. Suddenly, I heard the voices of the ghosts of that head, and they were saying, you wanted to be someone else. You didn't want to be yourself. And as I lay there with the head turned to the side, I said, I just want to be myself. Well, then get up off the ice, said the voices. And it occurred to me that when you fall, the best thing to do is to get up. But how? I was laying flat on the ice. I couldn't see a thing, but I mustered up every tiny bit of strength inside of me to get up and to skate without sight. Two people held onto my hands as the head was turned to the side, and they led me off the ice, still holding the giant bouquet of balloons. When I got inside the clubhouse of the ice rink, I heard lots of voices, like the voice of Nancy, the woman who had invited me. She said, whatever you do, don't damage the head. It cost us over $100 to rent the costume. And I was thinking to myself, but what about me? I'm stuck inside the costume and they can't get the head off. And I am suffocating in here. I heard the voices of those ghosts say, you're going to need a miracle to get the head off. And then I heard a voice of a woman say, I am here to save you. Now, I want everyone here to hold hands. It is the Christmas season, and I want all of us to say, Jesus saves, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. And even though I'm Jewish, I chanted along, Jesus saves, Jesus saves, Jesus saves, came my voice out of that muffled head. But then it also occurred to me that it was Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is our festival of miracles and light. And as I stood inside of that costume, I prayed for a miracle, and then one arrived. A person came with some kind of tool they had rigged up, and they were able to put the tool under the giant head, and oop, the head popped off. Nancy asked if I wanted to go back out and continue giving away the balloons, and I said yes, but only if I can be myself. And so, with a full balloon bouquet in hand, I skated out onto the ice. I could feel the strings, I could see the colors. And when the children said, "I want a blue one," I said, "Here's a blue one. I want a red one. Here's a red one." And then I heard the voice of a little boy say, "I want a red balloon." And his mother said, "James?" And he said, "I hope the penguin is okay. I'm so sorry that I tripped the penguin." I looked down at James and I said, "James, the penguin is better than okay. The penguin is doing great. The penguin went back to the North Pole. Here's your red balloon." And I really appreciated being myself. And ever since that day, I've never wished to be anyone else except for me. And when I looked down at James, I smiled. And when you're not wearing a giant head, you can smile. And I said, "Merry Christmas." And he smiled back at me. And because I had my glasses on, I could see his beautiful grin.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was great. So that's our show. It was a great show, wasn't it? We had we had failure and success. We had determination. We had disappointments. We had triumphs. We had a lot of spirit and a lot of warmth. The perfect thing for December. So I'd like to give each of these tellers a chance to mention something that may be coming up or something that they wish for you to know. And they may be putting some things in the chat, some contact information or some information for you. And just to remind you is that we have recorded this show. So if you missed anything, I know that Tina lost her connection, so she'll be wanting to watch this show. And maybe some of you would like to jump in and review some of the stories that you heard. So check the Storytelling Association of California's YouTube channel, and you can hear these stories again. And I know you'll want to, and share them with those that you love. What have you got coming up, folks? Let's start with Bowen. Bowen,